Imagine this. You're deep underwater, no sunlight. The air is thick, hot, and poisonous. Above you, explosions are shaking the hull. Your crewmates are panicking. And you have the power to end the world. What do you do? October 27, 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis is at its absolute peak. For 13 days, the United States and the Soviet Union have been locked in a staring contest with nuclear weapons loaded. The whole planet is holding its breath. But while Kennedy and Khrushchev are exchanging letters, the real decision isn't happening in the White House or the Kremlin. It's happening inside a sweltering, diesel-powered coffin somewhere in the Caribbean Sea. And inside that coffin is a man you've probably never heard of. A man who, with one word, stopped a full-scale nuclear exchange. A man who saved your grandparents, your parents, and you before you were even born. His name was Vasili Arkhipov. And this is a story about what happens when one person decides that cooler heads must prevail. The fog of war. Let's rewind a bit. It's October 1962, and the world has just discovered that the Soviet Union is secretly installing nuclear missiles in Cuba, barely 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The US responds with a naval blockade. Officially, they call it a quarantine, but make no mistake, it's an act of war. Tensions are so high that a single spark could ignite World War III. In the midst of this chaos, 4 Soviet Foxtrot-class submarines are deployed from the Arctic to the Caribbean. They are diesel-electric, designed for stealth, and they carry something far deadlier than regular torpedoes. Each one of them is armed with a nuclear-tipped torpedo. Not a tactical little nuke, a 10-kiloton weapon, roughly the same power as the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The mission is insane. They have to sneak past the American blockade, resupply the Soviet forces already on the island, and remain hidden at all costs. If they're discovered, they have orders to defend themselves. And the Americans? They have no idea that nuclear weapons are already prowling right beneath their warships. Hell underwater. Now let's paint the picture of submarine B-59. This isn't a sleek, modern nuclear sub. It's a cramped, diesel-powered steel tube designed for cold waters. Inside, the conditions are beyond brutal. The air conditioning breaks down early in the voyage. With no way to ventilate, the temperature inside the hull shoots up to over 60 degrees Celsius. That's 140 Fahrenheit. The humidity is nearly 100%. Condensation drips from the walls. Men are passing out from heat stroke. Fresh water is rationed to almost nothing. The crew is forced to drink from rusted pipes. They're exhausted, dehydrated, and running purely on adrenaline and duty. To make matters worse, the submarine's batteries are dying, and to recharge them, they need to surface or snorkel. But surfacing means detection, and detection, as far as they know, means death. This is the floating nightmare that Vasili Arkhipov finds himself in. And Arkhipov is not just any officer. He's the chief of staff of the entire submarine brigade. He sailed on the notorious K-19, the first Soviet nuclear submarine to suffer a reactor accident. He watched his fellow sailors die of radiation poisoning while they fought to prevent a meltdown. He's not a rookie. He's a man who has already stared death in the face. Bombs in the dark. On October 27th, the USS Beale, an American destroyer, detects B-59. The Americans have no idea it's carrying nuclear weapons. They think it's just a conventional sub trying to break the blockade. So they do what they've been ordered to do. They force it to surface. But their method is terrifying. They start dropping practice depth charges, essentially signaling grenades. They're not meant to destroy the submarine, but to tell the crew, "We know you're here. Come up now or face real weapons." But for the men inside B-59, who have been isolated from any radio communication for days, the explosions feel like the real thing. The hull groans, the lights flicker. The panic is instant and absolute. The submarine loses contact with Moscow. No radio signals can penetrate the water, and the jamming from American ships is intense. For all the officers know, a Third World War has already broken out on the surface. The air is so toxic that people can barely think, and the captain, Valentin Savitsky, makes a judgment call. He believes they are under attack. He believes the war has started. And so, he gives the order: load the nuclear torpedo. Here is where the protocol comes in, and where the fate of humanity hung on a technicality. To launch a nuclear weapon on a Soviet submarine, you need not just one, but 3 officers to agree: the captain, the political officer, and the brigade commander, Arkhipov. 3 keys. The captain and the political officer are already convinced. They are shouting. They believe their duty is to strike before the submarine is destroyed. They are about to push their buttons. If they do, a nuclear warhead will race through the water and obliterate an entire American carrier battle group. Thousands will die in an instant. And the United States, facing a nuclear attack on its fleet, will respond with overwhelming force. Full-scale retaliation, dozens of cities, millions of lives. Everything is now on Arkhipov. He is the third man, the one who must be persuaded, or must persuade the others to stand down. And this is where the miracle happens. In a boiling hot room, deafened by explosions, with 2 fellow officers yelling that the motherland is in danger, Vasili Arkhipov doesn't waver. He remains calm. He argues. He doesn't pull rank aggressively. He uses reason and the immense authority he carries from the K-19 incident. Everyone in that room knows he's no coward. They know he's seen hell before. And because of that, they listen. He convinces the captain that the explosions are signals to surface, not an attack. He argues that surfacing will allow them to make contact with Moscow and find out the truth. He says, "No," and that "no" echoes across the Cold War. Surfacing and silence. The submarine surfaces. It emerges right into the middle of the American fleet. Spotlights hit it. Aircraft buzz overhead. The Americans immediately demand to know who they are and what their intentions are. They still have no clue they were moments away from a nuclear fireball. B-59, battered and exhausted, eventually turns around and heads home. The crisis de-escalates. Kennedy and Khrushchev reach a secret deal. The missiles are removed from Cuba and the world breathes again. But what about Arkhipov? He didn't receive a hero's welcome. The Soviet government, embarrassed that a submarine was forced to surface, treated the crew almost as a failure. The story was classified. For 4 decades, what really happened in that steel tube remained hidden. Arkhipov continued his naval career, retired quietly, and died in 1998, largely unknown. A thank you 40 years late. It was only in 2002, when documents were declassified and survivors spoke out, that the world learned what Vasili Arkhipov had done. Thomas Blanton, the director of the National Security Archive in the US, put it bluntly. A guy called Vasili Arkhipov saved the world. Think about that. No award, no parade, just a simple, profound truth. Without his cool-headedness under inconceivable pressure, the world you and I live in would not exist. Your parents might never have met. You wouldn't be watching this video. The very concept of YouTube, of the internet, of the modern world. All of it could have been a radioactive wasteland. And this is the core of what makes Arkhipov's story so powerful. It's not about political ideology. It's about human judgment. In an era where we rely more and more on automated systems and rapid decisions, his story reminds us that a calm, thoughtful human being can be the most powerful weapon, or the most powerful shield. Conclusion and call to action. Stories like Vasili Arkhipov's don't just belong in history books. They belong in our collective memory. They remind us that the most important moments of history aren't always the famous speeches or the grand treaties. Sometimes they happen in dark, silent places, with no cameras, no glory, just a person making a choice. If you believe this kind of quiet heroism deserves to be remembered, hit that like button. It's the simplest way to say thank you to a man who can no longer hear it. And I'm curious, who else do you think history has overlooked? Who is your candidate for the most important person we never learnt about in school? Drop a name in the comments. Maybe your suggestion will become the next video on this channel. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, the future is never set in stone. Sometimes it's just one no away from changing everything.